Welcome back. Can I just ask you this? Both Mr. Groenewald, I'm not suggesting they said the same thing, but there is something which comes out, I think, and I'd like your comment on it, which is an important point. If you did tomorrow morning come into power, your party, and if you just simply said, we're redistributing land as you've suggested, my understanding is you just do it without compensation, and I don't know how you do it. Would you have a committee, or how would it work?
I mean, yeah, of course. I mean, it should be easy. Yeah.
Well, I'm just intrigued. My viewers would like to know.
No, a legislation should be passed that basically expropriate land and make it a national asset which is owned by the state.
You'd have to change the constitution too, I take it.
Of course, I mean, if that's required, we'll have to change the constitution.
Yes. You change the constitution, you then pass legislation, then what happens?
And then anybody wants the law, wants a piece of land, queues and says, I want a piece of land.
Mr. Trollip has said, and Mr. Groenewald too, if you did that, and I think the minister, well, he can speak for himself. The two gentlemen can contradict me, but I'm sure I heard them say this in different ways. If you did this, what would happen to food production?
Well, it will increase.
Why?
The biggest problem right now is that agriculture actually contributes less than 5% to the GDP. I've just seen statistics from the Human Sizes Research Council
but
that
if you didn't have people who were farmers and you just gave them land, why would you presume, what basis would you have that they would produce sufficient food for the country?
Already, lots of people who work on farms are slaves.
What evidence do you have that they produce more? I'm interested.
No, but
you're in power now. You can't risk people starving.
No. People are starving right now, by the way. People are starving right now. Food security in this country, up to about 48% of the population has got no food security as we speak. So if you bring more farmers onto land, you provide them with support, you protect them against these cheap imports, you are certainly going to produce more food. I mean, this, and people, by the way, I mean, with little bit of support, already we know small-scale farmers, the productivity levels are very high. The current model for agriculture is simply bad.
Okay, I got you. Yes, please.
Let's become realistic and rational. With great respect, 95% of food production in South Africa is produced by commercial farmers. If you do away with commercial farmers, we're going to have famine in this country. And with great respect,
we've got serious problems already. The argument is, what happens if you had more subsistence farmers? Would that not be a part?
It's a process. It is a process.
But do you accept that?
Of course. And I can assure you, there are many white farmers who wants to assist those people coming up and also becoming commercial farmers. But it is a process. You can't just come in Parliament and say you change the act or legislation. In fact, maybe we must just remind the EFF, the legislation is changed in Parliament by the majority vote, which is...
No, he's obviously presuming that he's going to get it.
But can I just respond to what the Minister said?
Yes,
I'm very glad to hear that he said that it's not 90% failure anymore. Maybe he must give us the new figure. How many of these projects are successful projects now?
Yeah. Minister?
You see, you remember in Parliament, I reported that at the end of 2012, that 1,296 farms, that's land reform farms, whether it's LRAT or whatever, are productive. Because we entered into a strategic partnership with commercial farmers. They're working very well, they've helped us. Some of the farmers are actually on their own. In the Free State alone, we have farmers who are linked to the market because they are red meat farmers. So in Northwest and so on. So it's actually happening. It's just that it's not. Maybe we could say the scale. Right. Remember, we're operating on a budget constraint. It's happening.
Can I just press you on something? Because this debate is interesting, despite all its heat, because what it reflects is, whether one likes it or not, that there are very different constituencies out here.
That's right.
And there is a view that if we don't get this right, you could land up in big trouble. So how do we know that over the next what's the time scale to get these targets up to where you plan them to be? I mean, how long is it going to take to bring about the sort of redress that we promised when the Constitution was passed in '94?
Can I, because then the Minister, I want to ask the Minister, can
No, I'm going to, sorry.
Peter's really hijacking this thing. I'm waiting my turn. I'm going to butt in every time.
But all right, have your thing. Yes, you want to say something?
I do want to say something. You know, the reality is in South Africa, we all live in this country. We're all South African citizens. We've all got a challenge. We need food security. We need to feed the nation. We need to put the nation to work. We need to make sure that every cent we use in land reform becomes productive. We can't put good money after bad. We've seen too many bad examples. Where there are good examples, and the Minister said it now, and I'm really interested about what he said, private-public partnerships in land reform are the only way to success, because profitability determines productivity. If you can make a profit, and the only time you can make a profit if there's proper management and accountability.
What about subsistence farming?
Subsistence farming has a role to play, and there are huge areas in this country where subsistence farming feeds people's household daily needs. But you also need commercial needs.
But how would you support that?
Through extension officers and pre- and post-settlement support, provision of seed and all that kind of thing. But Dennis, the reality in the world over is that urbanization is a national and international phenomenon. People move to the cities. Those people living in the cities can't provide for themselves. They need commercial agriculture to provide for them. And we need to get black commercial farmers, white commercial farmers, colored commercial farmers, koi and sand commercial farmers to produce food for the nation to live and to become productive and progressive.
And what I wanted to ask you was that, now that everybody has calmed down, that when you do your policy, I just want to probe this with you, and you give land to all sorts of people, will you not then have an inevitability that all sorts of that land will be sold back to others, and before you know it, within 5 years, people have cashed out, and you'll be back to the same problem, and you may not have sufficient commercial
difference between us and everyone else.
Sorry?
Land must be decommodified. In other words, land must never be put in the market for sale or for collateral, for anything like this.
So what happens if people just do not, what happens if, for example, you wake up and you aren't producing enough because you've gutted the commercial farming sector, and we aren't producing enough food?
Well, firstly, it will be shown that you don't have the capacity to do so, and we have given you support. You have the support, but even with that support, you can't produce. In that case, you're not supposed to be in that market. I mean, quite clearly. In Europe, it's happening. You know, like I was in Denmark, farmers were telling me that if we don't use this land in terms of the reasons were given, allocated, the state take that back land and give it to those who are productive.
Yes, because but they give it to people, they give it to people who can farm the land.
But people,
you wanted to give it to anybody.
Of course, and then you support them. Nobody's.
Well, I'm not sure. I can tell you right now, I couldn't be a farmer. Yes. Sorry. No, I want to get the minister.
Can I ask the minister?
Yes, you can ask the minister now.
You see, that's the problem. We must also distinguish between land redistribution and land restitution.
All right, but
we are actually mixing the two cases here. Okay. When it comes to restitution,
I've got to run out. You've got to ask the minister the question because I've got to finish.
I want
What's
to
the
ask
question?
Minister, your department said that we are going to open land restitution claims now again for 5 years. And the principle are also supported by the DA.
Yeah,
they also want it open.
Yes, say yes.
Okay. So how are you going to deal with about 400,000 claims coming in? That is going to cost the country about 180 billion.
I got the question.
Yeah. No, both of them. And so all three of them are wrong.
Why?
You know, they're saying that there's no program. No pre-settlement support, no post-settlement support. They're all three saying that. Secondly, they're saying that we are reopening, but there's no money. Where on earth is that? Government has a program. We're going to pay through fiscus. That's not a question. But there's a program, I've said just now. More than 1,296 by the end of 2012. Productive farmers, we've got a program. Recapitalization and development program. It's working. But they say there's nothing. Why can't they see it when it's said? And of course, we're going beyond 2013. I mean, 1913. The exceptions to the 1913 cutoff date refers to the Khoi and the San, who lost land long before 1913. Heritage sites, historical landmarks, where were the wars? The wars were never in 13%, they were in 87% of the land.
Got you.
Know your history.
Thank you, Minister.
Minister, I've run out of time. I think it's perfectly clear. I'm sorry I've run out of time. I'm sorry to everybody. I've tried to be as fair as I can because it's a hugely important issue, perhaps the most important. But I think there's one thing that comes out of this. If we don't solve this particular problem in one way or another, we're in big trouble. You've heard how it's supposed to be solved by various parties. Judge for yourself. Goodbye.
News that moves. ENCA.com.